Hi, I'm going to read you chapter 2. I started trying to read it and it froze. So this time I'm hoping that it doesn't freeze and that we can actually finish chapter 2. Sisko wasn't Sacramento that much when he realized at once. There were no three-story hotels. There were no wooden sidewalks. The one wide street was lined with low buildings that looked as if they could blow over in a stiff wind. I don't think Rose and Julia are missing much, thought Winnie. She had hoped Sisko would feel like a frontier town, a place of adventure. At first glance, it just looked small. I don't see Papa, said Mrs. Tucker, looking from the platform to the street. They looked inside the station. The waiting room was filled with benches and a pot-bellied stove. The station master was just filling the oil lamps by the door. Flapjack sneaked up behind him. Bert, you old pickaxe! Flapjack, you old grizzly! You look as poor as ever. How was the trip? Flapjack winked at Winnie. Bert, I've ridden burros that bucked less. The ride wasn't a total loss, though. I met up with the Tuckers. Eli Tucker's family, said Bert. How do you do, ma'am? Eli told me you were coming. He should be here directly. I saw a general store, Mama, said Winnie. Can we go in there while we're waiting? You go ahead, said her mother. I'll wait outside. I don't want Papa to miss us. Winnie found the general store to be true to its name. It sold a little bit of everything. There were stores like this in Sacramento, thought Winnie, but they were bigger and had more of a selection. Here the goods were put closer together with little attention paid to the display. Up at the counter, 2 miners were picking out some pots, and a woman was inspecting a bolt of cloth. Winnie's eyes, though, were drawn to 2 large jars on a nearby counter. So just like nowadays when you go to a checkout stand and they have candy and gum and you just grab candy because it's right there while you're waiting in line, you're staring at it, it's in your face, and you start to think, I really need gum. So this is a holdover from the olden days because the same thing, they would always put the candy in a general store in big jars that were at the front counter so that while you were standing in line, you would think, I really need some candy right now. She was drawn to the 2 large jars on a nearby counter. One was filled with licorice, the other with peppermints. Winnie walked up to the jars and tapped the glass. The peppermint was a sea of red swirls. The licorice was black. It is a hard choice, yes? On the other side of the jars stood a Chinese boy, a celestial. Everyone called the Chinese celestials because they called their home in China the Celestial Kingdom. The boy was no bigger than she was, but she was tall for her 10 years. Still, he looked older. She could tell that from his expression. He was wearing a blue cotton shirt, the kind all the Celestials wore. His black hair was long and tied in the traditional pigtail. It was not hanging down his back, though, the way Chinese men wore it in San Francisco. It was coiled around his head. Winnie had never seen a Celestial up this close before. She stared at his face, especially his eyes. They didn't really slant, she thought. They just came more to a point at both ends. The boy was waiting for an answer. Yes, said Winnie. It is a hard choice. Licorice is sweet and stretchy, but peppermint tastes like winter in your mouth. Winter in your mouth, the boy repeated. He thought it over. Hey, boy, aren't you finished yet? The storekeeper had come around from behind the other counter. His hand sat sharply on his hips. Hurry up, China boy. The railroad isn't paying you to stand around bothering my customers. The Celestial bowed slightly. I need a bowl, please. Metal. This wide. He held up his hands. The storekeeper snorted. You panning for gold? The boy shook his head. No, it is for cooking. Oh, right, for that foolish peanut oil. He pointed to a far corner. Pots and pans are over there. Winnie took a step back. She wondered what the boy had done earlier to make the storekeeper so mad. The storekeeper turned to her with his best smile. He won't be bothering you any more, miss. Now, how can I help you? Just some licorice, thank you. She took out her money. Winnie, he's coming, her mother called from the doorway. Winnie ran out just as Eli Tucker pulled up in a buckboard. He turned toward the general store. Afternoon, ladies, he said, tipping his hat. I do believe I've found the 2 prettiest women in this fair city. He jumped down from the wagon. "Oh, Papa," Winnie said, giggling. She ran forward to give him a hug. His beard had more gray in it than she remembered. He returned her hug and looked up at her mother. "I'm sorry I'm late, Marjorie. It's been an upside-down day." Sorry, Eugene is howling. It's his snack time. He comes in at about 2 hours after dinner and wants a little snack. And he's going to do that until I give him a snack. He returned her hug and looked up at her mother. "I'm sorry I'm late, Marjorie. It's been an upside-down day." Winnie smiled. That was her father's way of describing a day when nothing went right. "The powder got wet somehow," he went on. "We had to wait for some nitroglycerin. Then we had to make a new hole for the nitro. And then," he smiled sheepishly, "you don't really want to hear all this, do you?" "I'm just glad to hear your voice," said Marjorie. She came forward to join in the family hug. Eli Tucker looked down at Winnie. "Your hair's as blonde as ever, and I see you've been eating those growing pills again." He grinned. "So how was the train ride? How long did it take?" "Only 6 hours. There was a lot to see." Her father laughed. "You have to look fast when you're averaging 15 miles an hour." He took a deep breath and looked around. "So what do you think of Sisko?" "I just got here, Papa." She looked around again. "But there's not much of it to think about." Her father laughed. "Can't say I didn't warn you." He lifted the bags into the wagon. "And I haven't seen any children hereabouts. But come on, let's get you settled in. Nothing but the best for you, Winnie. Swanson's rooming house is the finest lodging establishment in Sisko." Marjorie laughed. "As I recall, Eli, it's the only lodging establishment in Sisko." Her husband smiled. "Now that you mention it, that may be true." "I'm hungry," said Winnie. She pointed to the railroad eating house beside the depot. "Are we going to eat there?" "Certainly not," said her father. "They charge 50 cents for a meal. Can you believe that? Only kings and presidents and folks who don't know any better eat there. For 50 cents you can eat all day at Swanson's." On their way to the rooming house, they passed a mountain mud wagon. The Chinese boy from the general store was sitting in the back. He held up some peppermints for her to see. Winnie just looked away. If this boy was trouble, she wanted nothing to do with him. So he's like being nice and friendly. He's showing a friendly gesture and showing her that he bought peppermints because they'd been talking about candy. And she just gives him the brush off, right? She just looks away because she thinks he's a troublemaker, and that's why the storekeeper was angry with him. Hope you have a good night. You want to check out Eugene? I'll flip it over here so you can see Eugene. Can you see Eugene? Hang on. Oh, Eugene, where are you? Here we go. Can everybody see you in your splendor? He's an awesome cat. All right. Have a good night's sleep, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.